Doing a quick, very short update on what I'm working on with OpenGL. I'm kind of taking a pause, I believe. Let me see what part I got to in the tutorial. I think I finished the getting started section, or I finished the getting started section. So next would be lighting and all those other things. And I'm taking a pause to just kind of like actually practice what I've learned. So I just want something super simple. I'm gonna create the game Brick Bounce, or whatever the actual name is. You know, the game where you have like this, you have a block on the bottom and you have balls bouncing around and they destroy the bricks that are up there. That's the game, just because it's like it's a good way to practice, you know, implementing this stuff, because the game itself is not super complex. It's not 3D for one. On top of that, I'm not creating a game idea for myself, because that's a whole nother added layer of creativity and complexity of like, okay, how do I want the game to work? And there's still gonna be questions like that a little bit, like, how do I want this game to work? But generally speaking, the outline already exists because it's not a game I created myself. So working on that, I'm just gonna give a quick kind of update as where it's at right now, and then maybe we'll do videos where I'm working on it or whatever, or streams. But where it's at right now is all we have is a little rectangle block guy, which is the player that moves around. Right now, this 7 looking shape is, I mean, it's a 7 because something I was doing just as like a, you know, just going down different paths of tinkering, was I noticed, and actually I'm curious if it still works on this computer. I noticed on my laptop at least, which is where I did all this so far, if I change this to 30, let's see if this does it too. Okay, it must be a laptop issue. What I was confused by is this, it wouldn't look like the game just running at 30 FPS. Like this thing would be, the little player brick or block would be noticeably laggy and weird, like jumping around. And I was like, let me get an actual FPS counter to see what like the frames. I mean, I guess it would be 30 FPS either way. It seems like it's working just fine, but it made me wonder, like, hey, let's actually try putting FPS counter. Like if I set this to, you know, this is really a maximum FPS, because if I did 1,000, it doesn't mean, what is this? Why does this keep happening? It doesn't mean that my game's gonna run at 1,000 FPS. It's gonna mean it's that at most it'll be 1,000 FPS. So I was curious, like, hey, I wonder what FPS I am running at. I can get that to display, but in order to get that to display, like on the screen itself, not in a print statement, I would need to have some sort of way of displaying text, right? Give me one moment. Yeah, I would need some way of displaying text. So I'm like, hey, let me implement that. I'm not gonna look up necessarily anything about text rendering. Hold on. This is messing up. I'm not necessarily going to look up anything about text rendering or how to actually do it. I'm just going to kind of figure it out myself. So the way I'm doing that is, okay, cool, that works. The way I'm doing that, just to start, I kind of mapped out what the various numbers would look like, and I drew it out on paper, mapped it out, figured out what vertices would be, created that as vertices, and then the indices, and then loaded that into like a VAO, VBO, and EBO, just to get something to be displayed. And after a lot of tinkering and trying to figure out what was going wrong with certain things, I obviously got it to work, and that's just being displayed there, and I could translate it and scale it so it could come up here. But then the next step really with that is to just do rest of the numbers, and then probably extract that logic out into its own file, so I can create useful kind of user functions, like, you know, display, like place text at a certain point of the screen and with a certain numbers and whatever. And just kind of keep going with that and see where I end up, because I think it's just a fun little thing to do, and then turn that into an FPS counter, like create a function that can like take in a value that would be, of course, the FPS value supplied by the render loop, and update that text up in the corner. That'd be cool. It's a cool thing to do. And after that, obviously, a lot of different things to do. Figure out how the ball bouncing works, the collision, maybe separate the code out into like render code versus game state kind of updating code. Because it's all just in one thing right now, one file. So that's where I'm at right now. Very simple game overall, but because it's manual graphics programming, it's more complex, and it's a good learning opportunity for me. So I'm excited to keep going with that and kind of see how this progresses from video to video.